Valid through March 5th, U.S. only. See store for details.
Country Gold Radio now invites you to stay tuned for a weekend appointment with attorney Carl Rominger.
All advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
I rise on behalf of the vast majority of the American people who believe that money is not speech, corporations are not people, and our democracy should not be for sale to the highest bidder. Overturn Citizens United.
That is a clip, a very rare clip that was smuggled out of the United States Supreme Court the other day during the McCutcheon versus United States case, which is basically being called Citizens United number 2, which has to do with corporate speech and political finance. And first of all, it's very unusual for people to stand up and give outbursts in the Supreme Court, but not unheard of. They're dutifully let out. But with all the modern security, some protest group was able to get a video in there to take the video and able to make the video and able to get the video out and able to get it on YouTube. Now, the conspiracy theorists out there, if you might remember when the first case was decided and Citizens United and the president made a point of chiding the Supreme Court at the State of the Union address to their faces, considered highly inappropriate at the time. One might wonder who could smuggle a camera into the Supreme Court and make it look like a cheesy cell phone video and get past all that security, but somebody with dispensation from the executive branch, perhaps. So maybe you heard it here first. We'll never know. Maybe we will. But it's a protest group. Maybe they just got the camera in there. But it's on YouTube. I'll be putting it up on the Facebook page so you can check the article out. Carl Rominger here. The show's weekend appointment, 243-1200 is the talk line number. If you have a legal question, legal concern, I am not in Antarctica. It does feel like that, but I am actually right here live in the studio. 243-1200 will answer your legal question here on the air. So just to give you an example, if you're trying to figure out, should you file for divorce or what's going to happen if you sue your neighbor over a right-of-way, call in and we'll give you a little explanation. We'll tell you the rules of the road. If you have procedural questions, you insist on representing yourself because you're an idiot, and you want a little help on how to hurt yourself even more, well, I'll give you just enough to make you dangerous. 697-4297 or 866-532-9466 are all numbers. So, jump on in and we'll answer your legal questions. Again, Carl Rominger, if you're joining the show for the first time, I'm a lawyer here in the mid-state and have general practice, and we have gun will travel. That guy standing up in the Supreme Court's interesting. Obviously, we don't get video of our Supreme Court, and we don't get video of our Pennsylvania Supreme Court very often, but we definitely don't get video of our trial courts here in Pennsylvania. And some people are opposed to cameras in the courtroom, but the reality is it's almost impossible for most people to take time out of their day to just sort of swing up to the Cumberland County Courthouse or the York County Courthouse and just sit in the back of the room and watch a trial. They'll highly encourage you to do it if you can. I think we should have cameras in the courtroom. If you have a comment on that, it's 243-1200. Happy to take them, and we'll talk about it. And if you're just waking up, don't worry. We're not worried about that. If your voice sounds a little scratchy, we'll be fine with it. And one of my buddies like, you're on at 8 o'clock. I'm not out of bed at 8 o'clock. I'm like, well, get up and get out of bed at 8 o'clock in the morning. I know that those of us here in the studio have no problem getting out of bed early in the morning, even if we went to bed later than you.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, well, we have, I think in the 70s they used cocaine. These days they have things like Red Bull and what else is it? Monsters and Zions. This is actually the official drink, by the way, of the Ultimate Fighting Challenge. But I watched a match in that yesterday. Those guys really do take at each other. I also want to tell you, McDonald's has a lawsuit against them now. Somebody's making a big deal. He wants $1.5 million because he says he only got one napkin. At least that's the way the press is reporting the story. And if you read the articles and you pay attention to the article and you get to the bottom of the article, you realize, and I've seen this article on TMZ and on Fox, when you get to the bottom of the article, if you read all the way through, well, it's not just that it was one napkin. The fact that he only got one napkin started the discussion with the manager, and that's when the manager used a racial epithet in this guy's mind, at least. But the point is he's not suing McDonald's because they only gave him one napkin. He's suing McDonald's because the employee made racist comments to him. At least in his allegation. May be true, may not be true. But the stories are being written in a way that if you don't bother reading to the fourth or fifth paragraph, you're left with a distinct impression that this man is only suing over getting one napkin. And to me, that's exactly how the news media controls the message. They put a title on it, man sues McDonald's for $1.5 million over a napkin. Then they give you the true facts, but they lay them out and bury the critical ones in such a way that the average person has no choice but to come to the conclusion that a man is suing McDonald's for $1.5 million over a napkin. Dan, call back in. We lost you on the line there, and we'll get you on. So think about this critically when you read articles. This is the other reason why you got to read to the bottom, because actually and truthfully, had this been a appropriately written journalistic article, now I don't expect that from TMZ, but Fox News, please, I would expect that from them at least. Shouldn't you put the salient facts and the important facts right up front and right in that inverted pyramid style, so that the fluff is at the end of the article, so that you can truncate it? The idea of journalism is you can truncate an article at any point or at a certain point and get rid of the fluff, but also get all the essential information out up front. And it's completely written in a way, again, that if a person doesn't get all the way to the bottom or an editor cuts the last two paragraphs, you're only going to have one conclusion, that this man is suing over one napkin for $1.5 million. And that's absolutely not what happened. So 243-1200, 697-4297, 866-532-9466. And let's try Dan. Dan, you're on the air. Dan? No, Dan. Dan, get a better cell phone, buddy. Was he hiding from the boss somewhere? Yeah. Dan. Oh, well. Just drop his line. Maybe he'll figure it out. Again, 243-1200. Dan, just go to the bathroom. He's going to try now. He's trying from a cubicle in the bathroom right now. And those are not really cubicles. What is the real name for this? I do not know. Also want to get done with Dan. If we ever get Dan on the phone, I want to talk to him about Putin. Hey, Dan.
Yeah. Hey, how you doing?
Good, man. What, are you hiding somewhere?
Yeah. I'm in a bad reception area.
Okay, not in the bathroom. That was my first guess. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, it's kind of long.
Make it interesting, okay? If it gets long and boring, we're going to cut you off. So.
Okay, well, I'll cut right to the thing. Here, we had a sell order on buying a property, and the partner gave me 3 days to settle, which is nuts, because he was forcing him to buy it himself. So we hurried up and got to the bank and got an approval.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the partner calls the bank and wants to know how our loan's going, and the bank says he's going to be approved tomorrow. And the partner said, "Stop processing the loan. I'm pulling the offer."
Huh.
Okay. No, he's in trouble there. Are they allowed to do that?
Well, let me ask this question. What was your was there a written agreement?
Yeah, he made the contract up. This is what he scams people for a living, but he made the contract up, and it said either partner decides to sell, they put it up, they offer it. You have to offer it to the partner. Of course, he offered it to me,
right?
But then he gave me 3 days to settle.
Now, wait. When you say he gave you 3 days to settle, what did the agreement say?
The agreement didn't have any
number of days.
No.
Okay. Well, first of all, when we're interpreting a contract, okay, when we're interpreting a contract, the terms, if they're not specified, can then be filled back in. Okay. And reasonableness is going to apply. Now, you probably know this. When it goes to buying a property, those transactions, after house goes under contract, traditionally it's anywhere from 20 days to 90 days to 120 days. It's considered commercially reasonable for closing date, right?
Right. So
you would read in a commercially reasonable date time to close to buy out of this property. This is land or something, right?
Yeah.
Right. So first of all, for him to impose 3 days is ridiculous. Number two, in a contract for real estate, which you didn't really have, although you had a kind of a contract for real estate, it has to have magic words. Time is of the essence if, in fact, deadlines are going to be strictly enforced, number two, okay? So here's my point. My point is you shouldn't have agreed to 3 days because you didn't have to, all right? And you may not be bound to even agreeing to 3 days because you got nothing in return for giving up a right you already had by agreeing to a shorter time period. There's no new contract, no novation, and since there's no what we would call consideration in you agreeing to that, you should be okay. So here's my point. My point is, on that, you're fine to buy the property. He still has to let you buy him out. Now, for him to call the bank and say he's pulling the transaction, now you have to sue him for breach of contract, right? Because he offered it to you, you started to perform, and then he prevented it. So you can actually force breach of contract on him and specific performance for him to sell it to you.
Okay, we went to arbitration, and I sent some dumb email, and they're saying that I was rejecting the offer. But
well, what did your email say?
All I told him is, you owe me. I found out he stole a lot of money. He stole actually a couple $100,000, and I asked him, and I just had found it out, and I sent an email. I said, you owe me this money. And when we went to arbitration, they kind of said, well, it sounded like you were rejecting the offer.
Well, when you said kind of owe me this money, did you mean but somehow you wanted it accounted for in that transaction?
I didn't specifically say that. I was just trying to get him to do specific performance, to perform on what he told me he was going to do.
When you say arbitration, was that arbitration with a professional arbitrator or a panel of lawyers in the county court?
Professional. It was like 5 of them. This is out in Wyoming.
Okay. So the contract had a arbitration clause in it. Yeah.
He doesn't want to see a judge. And what happened is he lied under oath when the arbitrators asked him, or when it was litigation, they asked him, did you call the bank? The bank called me and said, hey, your partner just said pull the loan, stop processing the loan. Mm-hmm. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, he called me and asked me if you were going to be approved, and I told him, yeah, you're going to be approved tomorrow. All right,
so he said that's not true. He said something different. Did you offer any evidence besides your own word to rebut that?
No, and our lawyer didn't bring in the banker to testify. Right. And then I kind of lost, but I wanted to. Can I go to the banker now and get him to swear a testimony against it?
Potentially, and that maybe that he perjured himself, yeah. And that might be a way to reopen it if you can prove that he perjured himself. The problem is proving perjury just because somebody says something different than somebody else said doesn't necessarily mean perjury, because the joke is when you go to court, in every case, 3 people testify differently, right? And there'd be perjury in every case. So getting a perjury conviction or getting a court to declare that what somebody said was obviously perjury requires a very high level of proof. It'd be really nice if the banker had a memo or something in his file, right?
Right.
It says,
so even if we get the banker to admit what happened there, I still might have a hard time doing it.
Yeah.
Proving it.
Yeah.
Holy heck.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then maybe I won't. I was going to appeal it, but
but you need to talk with your lawyers about this, because if you're going to not appeal some large financial transaction because of some conversation you had for 3 minutes with Carl Rominger on the radio, that's not right. Okay. All right, you got that?
Okay.
So,
all right.
I don't want to hear later, I didn't do it because Carl told me not to. All right?
Yeah. Yeah,
right.
I'll call back.
Listen to your damn lawyers. All right, talk to you later, buddy.
Okay,
got to go to break. 243-1200, Carl Rominger here. We'll get back. We'll keep answering your legal questions. 243-1200. Oh, maybe we're on break. No, we're not on break. I don't know. Technical difficulties, failure to launch.
It's the first of its kind. Magnolia's Jewelers International Jewelry Outlet is the Mid-State's most affordable source for distinct and unique gold jewelry, precious gems, and diamonds of all shapes and sizes. Stop by and meet Magnolia's Jewelers' friendly staff at 728 North Hanover Street and find the perfect gift. There's a beautiful selection of diamonds, 10 to 18 karat gold jewelry, platinum jewelry, both freshwater and cultured pearls, and lovely gold bracelets and chains in solid and linked styles. Best of all, everything is priced 30% less than the rest. Magnolia's Jewelers even does repairs, sizing, and creates custom jewelry to meet your designs. And don't forget, Magnolia's pays top dollar for your unwanted gold. Now you don't have to travel to the big city to enjoy outlet prices on fine quality gold jewelry. Magnolia's Jewelers is open Monday through Friday from 10 until 5, and then Saturdays by appointment. Give a gift or treat yourself to exquisite jewelry from Magnolia's Jewelers on Route 11, the Harrisburg Pike, Carlisle, across from AutoZone and near the Army War College.
On September 8th, 2006, WEEO was granted a license by the Federal Communications Commission to serve the public interest as a public trustee until August 1st, 2014. Our license will expire on August 1st, 2014. We must file an application for renewal with the FCC on April 1st, 2014. When filed, a copy of this application will be available for public inspection during our regular business hours. It contains information concerning this station's performance during the last 8 years. Individuals who wish to advise the FCC of facts relating to our renewal application and to whether this station has operated in the public interest should file comments and petitions with the FCC by July 1st, 2014. Further information concerning the FCC's broadcast license renewal process is available at 728 North Hanover Street, Carlisle, Pennsylvania, or may be obtained.
We made Tylenol
FCC,
Sinus to
Washington,
relieve your
D.C.
sinus headache. You made popcorn to perfection. We relieved your sinus congestion. You found the perfect movie for your kids. We eased your sinus pain. You got your kids to bed without a peep. Only Tylenol Sinus combines the #1 doctor-recommended brand of pain relief and a powerful decongestant. But for everything we do,
Can I sleep in your bed?
we know you do so much more. Tylenol Sinus. Use as directed.
When I walk into Buffalo Wild Wings, I'm not just a customer.
I'm a fan.
And in this house,
This house,
fans rule.
This is our stadium.
Our locker room.
our dugout,
Our sports drinks are served on tap. And our pregame meal is
hand-spun wings.
In victory or in defeat, we never leave hungry.
because in this house, we are the MVPs.
Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports. Visit BuffaloWildWings.com to find the location nearest you.
And now, back to Weekend Appointment with attorney Carl Rominger live on Country Gold FM. Call Carl now with your legal questions at 243-1200, 697-4297, or toll free from anywhere in the Mid-State at 1-866-532-9466.
Okay, let's listen in on a little phone call here.
Please speak with a sworn police officer.
And your name is?
My name is Ashley.
One moment, please.
Thank you.
This is somebody in Connecticut calling in to ask about the gun ban.
Yes, who am I speaking with? What's your name?
You're speaking with Lieutenant Vance.
Oh, nice to meet you, Lieutenant Vance.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Ashley. I have a question. My husband received a letter in the mail regarding... Let me get to it. Hold on.
This is about the gun ban in there.
Basically, it's from the field... State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, Division of State Police,
This
Special
is where they're taking their
Licensing
guns,
and
which they
Firearms
said they'd
Unit.
never do here in America.
And basically it says because he missed the deadline of January 1st, 2014 to register his so-called assault weapon
They don't
or
keep registries,
high-capacity
just ask them.
magazines, he now has to turn them in or sell them to a dealer.
There are four choices, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so my question is this. What happens if my husband decides not to do this?
Well, that's a better question for a lawyer, but my understanding is it's a felony to possess an unregistered assault weapon and a high-capacity magazine.
Keep in mind, he lawfully owned these until recently.
So what will happen then if my husband refuses? Will you come to our home to arrest him?
Well, I certainly wouldn't, but he could be subject to arrest. We haven't crossed that bridge just yet, to be honest with you. I don't have a good answer for you as to what would happen. I know that letter was sent out with the intent to tell people that Basically we know you have the weapon, and if that in fact is accurate and you haven't gotten rid of it, here are your options if you want to be within the boundaries of the law.
Okay, so isn't this a very slippery slope that's going on here? Going to put the police in harm's way?
I don't see that, ma'am. But
you mean going door to door to people's homes, if it comes down to that, is not putting the police in harm's way?
Well, I don't know. We're in harm's way.
And we could go on and on and on. But that is the spokesman there for the Connecticut police that somebody managed to get on the phone. And he's explaining why or what's going to happen, but he doesn't seem to know, because what happened is up there in Connecticut, like in New York, they passed one of these gun bans, and they said, these guns that you own, you must now register and or do certain things with them. And if you don't qualify for the registration, or the weapon doesn't qualify for the registration, you've got to give them up or we're going to confiscate them. Then what they did was they took their little list of registrations and compared it to their list of gun purchases, just like our governor has the state police keeping. I'd like to know if Tom Corbett's reelected, if he would tell the state police to stop keeping a registry of who buys what guns, but I'll bet he won't. And as a result, they matched those two up, and then they sent out letters to people and said, we believe you own a gun that we've now made illegal, and bad things are going to happen to you if you don't do something right away and comply with the law. And what she's concerned about, and what people are talking about, is what's going to happen. Are they going to pry guns from, as people say, my cold dead hand up there in Connecticut? Or will the citizenry capitulate? Will the, because here's what happens. You want to come take my guns, and then what shows up? 3 stormtroopers, right? Guys in bulletproof vests, body armor, face shields. Okay. My supposedly very dangerous weapon that they're coming to confiscate is not going to hold off 4 well-armed police, let alone the 18-man SWAT teams, paramilitary SWAT teams that they're going to bring in to take the guns from these people. And the only reason I play that for you is this proves, I remember when I was 12 and I was in a local fish and game club and we get in the gun control debate, and people would say, they're never going to take guns away from anyone in America. They will never round the guns up in America. It will never happen. Well, it's happened in New York, it's happening in Connecticut, and there's a bunch of people who would be happy if it happened here in PA. So, wake up, America. All right, that's my Wake Up America moment there. Wake the up. Because that's what's going on. 243-1200 if you want to talk about that, if you want to sound off, or if you want to just ask a legal question, 697-4297. Or 865-332-9466. You listen to the Carl Rominger Show, where I answer people's legal questions here. We call it Weekend Appointment. And so here's your chance to get some free legal advice. Again, 243-1200, 697-4297, or 866-532-9466. Also want to remind you to stop over at Harrisburg Beer and Cigar on Union Deposit in Harrisburg, of course, hence the name. That's not always true. Sometimes, you've got like the Lancaster Tack Shop and it's in Lebanon or something, and that throws you off. But they've got great cigar selection, great beer selection. I, in fact, was smoking a Rocky Patel I got from them last night. Somebody told me it was huge, and somebody else told me it stunk. And which time I always offer. If somebody comments on my cigar and tells me it stinks, I always offer them one. So that's why I always carry at least an extra on me, because that way I can test whether they're just trying to be obnoxious and see if they're or if they really are interested in the cigar. So, also talking about an armed citizenry, Putin is in the middle of invading the Ukraine, and we've got thousands of troops with no insignias on them, right? They're wearing camouflage, but they've got no badges or insignia, so it's hard to say if they're native Crimeans or actually Russian shock troops or security forces. Some people think they're private vendors, but some videos come out of Russian planes landing when troops coming out of them, again, without insignia on their uniform. And interestingly, being a soldier without insignia has legal significance. Uniformed soldiers are entitled to certain rights, right? People with no insignia and no uniform are not. Hence the reason we have some people locked up in Guantanamo Bay. Our position is they were not uniformed soldiers, and therefore they're not entitled to the rights under the Geneva Convention, and that's been the U.S.'s position. Theoretically, these soldiers out there in Russia without any uniform insignia don't operate under the same legal rights or apparatus as troops would under the Geneva Convention. There's a little more to it than that, but it's important. And putting people out, large numbers of people in uniforms without insignias by state actors is significant. It's a significant international incident in and of itself. Our president, and I stand behind our president, by the way, has warned Russia not to intervene. They appear not to be heeding that, but again, they're not doing it in uniform, and I think that's one way they're trying to sidestep the political angle and say, okay, well, we didn't do it. This were just a native group of men who got together and threw some camis on and went out and took control of the Crimean airport and lots of other important facilities around controlled by the government. Very interesting what's happening over there. Keep an eye on it because these are the little flashpoints that can sometimes lead to the world wars, And I hate to talk like that, but that's exactly what happens. Russia gets dragged in, they have vital interests. We get dragged in because NATO gets dragged in, and the next thing you know, there's a full-out shooting match, and then you got the Chinese sitting on the side and India sitting on the side smiling, just hoping that the two of us will wear each other out. Because Russia is powerful, but it's a dying beast, and it's probably going to thrash. That's my feeling on the matter, and that's always the dangerous time. You've got a legal question at 243-1200-697-4297. We'll get them answered. I did like that guy earlier. He says, okay, well, based on what you told me after 3 minutes of talking on air, I'm just going to give up a $500,000 claim. I always caution people, what you hear here on the air is a synopsis and its general direction where I'm trying to point you in the right direction and give you a little something to think about or to chew on. And I'm happy to second-guess your lawyer if you want me to do that with a second opinion. But I don't have all the information, and that's always a problem. I've been at trial before where something happens and the client says, who we got?
We have Luke from Carlisle. Hang on.
Luke.
Yes.
Use the force, Luke.
That's the first time I've ever heard that. You know it.
I'll bet. I bet you want to punch me right now.
First time today.
Just punch your radio. It won't hurt.
I got a question. About a year ago, or just under a year ago, I worked for a company, and we did construction.
Okay.
We did a job for a large, let's say, just a large type of company around here. And towards the end of the job, they decided that they were going to go for, there were some of the contractors were prevailing wage, and they got a grant, and they decided that they were going to pay everybody else the same prevailing wage. So that meant, me going from, say, $15 an hour to $40 an hour or whatever, In the meantime, after this place decided to pay this money, there's a bunch of red tape and grants and all that, paperwork to go through. But in the meantime, I had lost my job.
Okay.
And, they were going to take and back pay everything we had done on the project with this prevailing wage money. Now, since I lost my job, my former employer decided, we're still waiting on the money, whenever it comes in, we'll pay it to you.
Right.
Well, I found out since then, talking with different people and actually talking with my former employer, yes, they've gotten the money, but in the meantime, my former employer had some issues with the IRS, this and that, and
so they don't have the money now.
Well, supposedly they have the money. I keep hearing, the same thing. Well, I have to talk to my wife. Oh, she has to talk to the accountants, this and that. And we don't know how to pay it out now. Basically, because the IRS has their money, their hands in their accounts and stuff. I guess my question is, if they have the money, will I ever see it? And do I have to take any steps to ensure that I do see that money?
You've got up to, you got up to 4 years to bring a claim, okay?
Okay.
My advice would be to contact Department of Labor to start with.
Okay.
And talk with them about making a wage claim potentially just to get you in the queue. it sounds like these people may or may not have the financial wherewithal to pay you the money at this point, or the money may have got tied up, or it may be owed you.
I've heard that they're looking to. I mean, they've paid me the original wages that I was owed. My regular hourly rate when I was doing the work. So I'm cool with that. We didn't know we were getting all this extra money until pretty much the end of the project. So and I left on pretty good terms. I knew how the circumstances that they were having, and I'm not really trying to make them mad or anything, but I've heard probably I'm looking at probably $10,000-$12,000.
Well, yeah, that's a substantial amount of money, and you're struggling with, and let me just point this out for a second. You're struggling with something that frequently comes up in legal disputes, which is the person you want to sue, or the person who owes you money, or the person who owes you something, or who wronged you somehow, is not your sworn enemy. And a lot of times they're actually somebody you know well, or they're a friend, or their family, or they're just a neighbor. And you got to think about the considerations of the emotional aspects. And so as lawyers, we sometimes forget about that because, if it was up to us, we would just tell you to execute your neighbor, Oh, just shoot your neighbor and you won't have to worry about it at all because here's why. And that level of, of what do I say, lack of emotional overlay, whereas counselors, on the other hand, some of them I think are guilty of, well, just to avoid conflicts, we won't do this, we won't do that. And I always joke, but they don't want the person to assert their rights to avoid the conflict. So somewhere there's a happy medium in between. But it's just funny. I always like to point out, like you're saying, I like these people. I don't want to burn my bridge, but I want to protect myself. But at the same time, I don't want to club them either. And that's normal. And so as a lawyer, we sometimes say, you've got to work something out. And so some gentle pressure is a good way to go. But gentle pressure doesn't always protect your legal rights. And so, basically I sometimes tell escalate. Like, first conversation is, listen, figure out a plan for me. Give me a plan. Okay, you guys haven't been able to come up with a plan or some assurances or put anything in writing. So if I don't hear back from you in another 10 days, I'm just going to make a claim with Department of Labor. But I hope you understand I'm just doing it to make sure I'm in the queue and everybody realizes I feel I'm owed this.
Right, yeah, because if they decide to file for bankruptcy, and I wasn't even sure, am I entitled to that money?
Do you have an absolute legal right to that money? I don't know, but I will explain it this way. I do know from a client who was working on a job site one time as a subcontractor. Along came the prevailing wage inspector and said, how much are you paying these guys that work for you? And he had two guys working for him. And he's like, I'm paying $15 an hour to, cut this metal up. And the guy's like, well, that's not the prevailing wage. And he said, what do you mean? So anyhow, long story short is they told him, oh, yeah, you guys got 2,000 hours in on this job. You owe these guys, you guys owe them each 1,000 hours back at, X additional dollars. And what was really funny was, now here's the real story. The guy couldn't afford to pay that because he wasn't actually getting paid by the general. It was one of these deals where it was a large facility that was being refurbished, and they said, if you guys want to take your crew in there and cut out scrap metal, feel free.
Yeah,
but we're not paying you.
So you can have it for scrap metal prices.
Right. So he just about. But here's the thing. Now, when we got with the prevailing wage guy, and he understood that the money was not flowing from them. Okay. Then it was okay because that seemed to be their test. In other words, once that money comes down from a government grant or something that triggers that prevailing wage. In the contract, then all the subs have to get paid the prevailing wage as well, and the general has to make sure of that, and the subs are supposed to know that, and et cetera, et cetera. So my thought on it is you're entitled to it somehow, and it's supposed to be paid to you, yeah. Because and in retroactivity, I think it probably exists as well. So that's my thumbnail, all right?
Okay. All right, well, thanks for your time, Carl.
Awesome, man. Thanks for calling in.
Yep, bye-bye.
All right. Yeah, 243-1200, 243-1200 if you have a legal question. Let's talk about prevailing wage for a minute. Prevailing wage is fascinating. It's the concept, right? And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, the government gives a grant to build a bridge, or the government itself contracts to do something, and the labor unions and the Democrats, with some assistance from the Republicans, which I'm going to explain here in a second, have come up with this scheme called prevailing wage, where we determine that the prevailing wage is $40 an hour for somebody to do something, and that's the union guys, but the non-union guys get $12.50 an hour. So the project has to be paid at that prevailing wage scale. That means anybody who gets the job gets a lot more money per hour. And somehow it's a good thing for the government. And the thing about this one, somehow it's a good thing for the government to pay more for stuff than what other people do. So if you're a school district and you want to build a building, you shouldn't pay what everybody else in your district pays. You should pay what the federal government and the state authorities say somebody should pay in your district at some prevailing wage, which is always more than the actual wage. In fact, hence why they have to enforce it, because if the prevailing wage were anywhere close to the actual wage, it would just fix itself, right? So the prevailing wage is a way to artificially push money to union workers and sometimes non-union workers as well. But and somebody out there's going to go, I knew those Democrats and those unions were up to no good. Guess who else is in on this? Come on, kids. Remember the Brooklyn Bridge? They fleeced the Brooklyn Bridge. That's how it worked back in those days. Public works projects were built, and large percentages of the money got parceled out through chicanery. And after the Brooklyn Bridge and going forward, as government was forced to do less and less fraudulent things as individual actors, one of the things they discovered was, if we can make a government project cost more than it should, then the companies can keep a healthy profit. So here's the answer. If the government bids me a contract and it would cost me $3 million to make it, and I keep $2 million of it, it's pure profit. Everybody's going to scream bloody murder that they gave me a contract for $3 million and somehow I kept $2 million of it. Therefore, I fleeced the government, and that's bad. But what if I was told that I have to pay $9 million or $10 million in wages and materials and have to do all these things with prevailing wage and only use select vendors, etc. And so now the $3 million project costs $10 million, and I take $2 million off of it as just a 20% profit. So prevailing wage allows unions to get higher wages for their members, and it allows the big businesses who own the businesses and employ the workers to get a healthy percentage of a larger number from the government. So who loses on prevailing wage? You do. Everybody else wins. That's how it really works. It's a detente between business and Republicans and union and labor unions and Democrats to cause public coffers to cough up more money into the hands of the business guys and the unions for each project that they work on. So next time you hear something about prevailing wage, just know that the person being fleeced is you. I guess I got to go to break here. 243-1200.
Do you know what that sound is? That's your new digital marketing department. And that'll be your new web designer. And that's Haibu, where these experts are joined by many more, from web designers to search marketing specialists who work hard to get your business noticed online and on mobile. Best of all, Haibu can do it all for you, or give you the tools to do it yourself. To find out more, go to Haibu.com. That's HIBU.com. Or call 855-464-HIBU. Oh, that'll be your next new customer. Haibu, made for business.
We made Tylenol Sinus to relieve your sinus headache. You made popcorn to perfection. We relieved your sinus congestion. You found the perfect movie for your kids. We eased your sinus pain. You got your kids to bed without a peep. Only Tylenol Sinus combines the #1 doctor-recommended brand of pain relief and a powerful decongestant. But for everything we do,
can I sleep in your bed?
We know you do so much more. Tylenol Sinus. Use as directed.
When I walk into Buffalo Wild Wings, I'm not just a customer.
I'm a fan.
And in this house,
This house,
fans rule.
this is our stadium.
Our locker room.
our dugout,
Our sports drinks are served on tap, and our pregame meal is
hand-spun wings.
In victory or in defeat, we never leave hungry.
because in this house, we are the MVPs.
Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports. Visit BuffaloWildWings.com to find the location nearest you.
Enjoy a morning of sacred music and inspiration every Sunday on Country Gold Radio. Tune in for the Lutheran Hour at 5. I'm Larry Flood, and I'll be along from 6 to 7:30 with gospel favorites on a country Sunday morning. Following my program from 7:30 to 8, it's music, praise, and a gospel message with Reverend Mary Lou Dietz on the Hour of Freedom. Join my good friends Evangelist Wayne Wheeler in his Harvest Time Gospel Hour with music and a sacred message from 8 until 8:30, and Dave Garner's Mountain Time Gospel music from 8:30 to 9. At 9 on FM 93.9 and AM 1480, we present the worship service from Messiah United Methodist Church of Shippensburg. And Wayne Wheeler's back from 9 to 10 on 97.9 and AM 1000. Then 10:30 to 11, it's Minister Tony Terrell from the Carlisle Church of Christ with Let the Bible Speak. And don't miss your weekly scripture lesson on the Bible Study Hour at 11. Join us and praise our Lord with music and inspiration every Sunday morning here on Country Gold Radio.
And now, back to Weekend Appointment with attorney Carl Rominger live on Country Gold FM. Call Carl now with your legal questions at 243-1200, 697-4297, or toll free from anywhere in the Mid-State at 1-866-532-9466.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back, Carl Rominger here. Lynette in Boiling Springs, what do you got for me?
Yes, hi, Carl. Good morning. I have a question. A friend that is a client of yours, and they're working on a quadro issue.
Okay.
And it's a time-sensitive case. Like, they have to have an answer to this issue within 30 days. And we're starting to run out of time now. I think they have maybe 1 week left for this quadro issue. And they've been trying to get in contact with you, and for some reason,
I think the one you're talking about, I thought I talked to somebody about that this week. So you might be behind the times.
Well, maybe I am, but I'm hoping, because these poor people have been through 4 different lawyers.
Yeah, I know. Then I definitely know which one you're talking about. Yeah, and I can't talk about individual cases, but let me just say it this way: that quadro shouldn't even exist. But for somebody writing a very terrible agreement in the earliest stages of his dissolution of his marriage. Yes, and I know absolutely which one you're talking about, and that's we've resolved that issue.
Okay, that's great to know.
We've resolved. Well, let me put it this way: we resolved part 1.
Okay.
Part 2 now has to be relitigated. And this is a classic problem. When you come to a lawyer after a case has been, how would we say, hashed over in the courts for long periods of time, a lot of decisions that weren't appealed become final. And so getting around finality on some of those decisions is problematic. But I think we have an end run on one of them.
Okay, that would be great, because they've been fighting this issue for like almost a year and a half, and it's just getting to the point now where it's very frustrating. So, well, I appreciate your help, and, hopefully, this is all done in this timely manner, because I don't want to see these hardworking, honest people, have to pay a penalty or get in trouble by the law.
Right, but, and that's, if you know the facts, and without going to the facts, okay, as you understand, there's already a court order in place, and the question is, can that court order be reopened? And, see, that's what I want to caution people about is, because and not talking about that case, but sometimes people say, well, I just signed it because I was told I had to.
Exactly.
And here's what happens: that if we let that work as an excuse all the time, right, then everybody who is unhappy with something would simply say, well, I only signed it because I was told I had to, therefore I should be able to get out of it. And what happens is that's impossible or not workable. So I'll give you another example. Somebody said to me, the fact that this business transaction they were involved in, the fact that it went so terribly wrong, isn't that proof of fraud? And I'm like, no. I'm like, most businesses fail. Therefore, if you're involved in a business transaction, where you help a partner open a restaurant, or you give a buddy a loan to start his own business, and he files bankruptcy, or you never get your money back, or whatever happens, I'm like, that's not fraud. That could just be business. And if we just let people say that every time they were on the bad end of a business deal that there was fraud to undo it, then it would be unworkable. So what the courts have done is said, we will not accept fraud as a reason to get out of a contract unless you prove fraud by clear and convincing evidence. And even then, it has to be strictly proven. You have to meet certain elements, et cetera, and there's no wiggle room. And the reason for that is simply because everybody will claim fraud. And same thing with court orders. People will say, I was told I couldn't appeal it. I told I had to sign it. I just had to agree to it. And those are great stories, and they're quite often true. But courts will very rarely give them the time of day because otherwise we would have no finality. And that's the concept that at some point court orders just have to stand, or else what's the point of having the order and the decision in the first place? So that's the mountain we're climbing.
Okay. So what do you suggest they do? Reopen a court order?
Well, that's what I'm trying to say is that's the trick on that one. And the problem with that one is you have time rules for reopening court orders. But sometimes if an order is deficient or an order didn't contemplate certain circumstances, then maybe you can use that as a basis either to prevent enforcement of it, or to allow for a modification of it based on the equities of the situation. But nonetheless, I just want to say courts jealously guard orders. So, for instance, we had a fellow on the radio last week, and he filed an appeal, And he filed his appeal in the wrong court, essentially. He filed it within 30 days in the Superior Court, which is what the rules tell you have to do. But he didn't know there's another rule that says you still have to file something else within 10 days in the trial court in order to preserve that 30-day appeal.
Okay.
And since he didn't do that, he now has no right of appeal. And he's struggling with that because he can't understand how it is that he filed with the one court an appeal, and now they're saying that just because he didn't file a little piece of paper in the other court within 10 days, that means they won't even hear his appeal. And the reason is because once that 10-day matter wasn't filed and the court above says they don't have jurisdiction to touch the court order below. And the court order below can be terribly wrong, and it doesn't matter what the equities are, and it doesn't matter how botched up it was. There's no way to reopen that on that basis. There's a way to open a court order called nunc pro tunc, which make now what was then. But courts have circumscribed that down to basically say, if you want nunc pro tunc, you're going to have to prove that there was a breakdown in the court process. The clerk sent you the wrong dates or failed to send you something. Well, guess what? They send everything first-class mail, right? And they dutifully note in their little ledger that they sent it first-class mail. So whether they sent it first-class mail or not, you have no way to verify that they didn't, right? So proving a breakdown in the court system is also near next to impossible unless the clerk comes in and says, yes, I remember that case, and I put the wrong address on the envelope.
Okay.
So anyhow, I'm just giving you some thoughts, but I appreciate your call. I'm going to let you go. I think we maybe have one more here, all right?
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, take care. 243-1200. I always like when people call into the show to talk to me about one of my other clients, but I understand the situation. What's today? Today is
March 1st.
March 1st, which is Saturday.
Yes.
Yeah, I handled that on Thursday. I guess some afternoon. So, yeah, it is March 1st. It's the beginning of a new month. In like a lion, right? Isn't that what they say?
Yeah, in like a lion. And tomorrow we're supposed to get a foot of snow.
In like a lion. Imagine that.
Wow.
But out like a lamb. And what could be more innocent than a little lamb?
I don't know. That's bad.
Well, that's bad, right? Mary had a little lamb, and the doctor was surprised. And that's the old. No, I say it seriously though. The lamb, the symbol of innocence, or separating the goats from the sheep. We have all these little archetypes that we like to deal with. And talking about the anthropomorphism of animals, I actually am going to get involved in a case where somebody came and seized some horses and other animals from a farm, and I can't wait. I'm taking it with relish because coincidences of coincidences. There had been a vet at the farm literally 2 days before the government decided to come in and say that there was something going on. And you never get that. It's sort of like when your guy slips and falls on the ice and he's got these two discs that are bulging out and the other side says, well, he could have had those discs all his life. And you go, I had this case, by that's why I remember it. And you go, well, it's funny you mention it. 2 weeks beforehand, he happened to have a series of x-rays done because of some other procedure they wanted to do on his shoulder. And it shows this area of the back. And as you can see, there's no bulging discs at that time. So just 2 weeks before, it could have developed in those 2 weeks. But it prevents that that problem. And here, they're going to say, usually the government comes in and says, oh, well, the vet hadn't been out there for 6 months and you were beating your animals and, not cleaning the stalls. And this brings me back to this like innocent little lamb thing, which was I said to somebody, I said, do you ever deal with a horse? You realize, right? You have to brush that thing off every day. They roll right back in the mud. They roll right back in the you-know-whats. And if you're thinking of animals on the farm as these fuzzy, cute, clean little animals, or you're thinking of the horse with that shiny, glossy coat, that only lasts for a few moments until you're done brushing the horse and cleaning the hooves with that little metal thing and whatnot. I've done all this. That's how I know. But my point on all this is that this ideal little fuzzy little lamb in real world is going to be a little...
Barnes is 11th.
He followed her to school.